The Israeli military has launched a massive series of strikes across Lebanon, and the U.S. military may be moving more troops into the Middle East. Is the Middle East on the brink of war or more war? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is a really interesting developing story that I'm going to keep you guys posted on. Here's kind of the latest, 24 to 48 hour chart of the Israel-Lebanon area. And as you can see, there is a large volume of Israeli airstrikes taking place across southern Lebanon. You can see that they've more or less blanketed the region in airstrikes and artillery fire. And this is, again, a response to increasingly aggressive actions by Hezbollah. Hezbollah being the government within a government. They are essentially a terror group organization that runs southern Lebanon. Something close to if a terror group, criminal organization, and government all got together, they would be Hezbollah. Again, you can also see, though, the Israelis continuing to experience at least security incidents and combat in both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So this is, again, a really troubling escalation in this conflict, right? The Lebanese health minister reporting that around 300 people were killed in these airstrikes and around 1,000 wounded. Hezbollah saying their senior commander is okay, but again, as we talked about earlier, the attack with the beepers and the walkie-talkies definitely damaged a lot of Hezbollah's ability to conduct military operations and to frankly offer any kind of return attack on the Israelis. But you can never count out terror groups like this, as we talked about earlier. Terror groups and asymmetric warfare, you only have to get it right once. Now, these airstrikes have focused, it seems, primarily on the logistics around Lebanon. And one of the fears that Israel has that they've actually explicitly said is that, Hezbollah has very strong ties to the Iranians. And the Iranians, in turn, have actually been getting a lot of resources from the Russians. So Hezbollah may have actually more powerful tools, particularly cruise missiles, than they've ever had in the past. And this is pretty troubling, right? We know that relationship between Hezbollah and Iran is strong because, again, when the Israelis blew up all of Hezbollah's pagers, the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon was hit. Right? What was he doing with a Hezbollah pager, and who in Hezbollah was giving him orders? Interesting stuff to think about. But the other piece of news that I really want to talk about is the U.S. decision to send more troops into the region. But before we talk about that, of course, guys, if you feel like you are getting just absolutely crushed, maybe by your day, maybe by the need to get to the gym and do work and take care of everything, you don't need to launch a ambitious airstrike campaign. You may just need a little strike gum. Right? Strike Gum is the energy drink alternative. Zero sugar, made in the USA, veteran-owned, 90 milligrams of caffeine in each piece. This one pack of gum contains the equivalent of 5 energy drinks worth of caffeine, right? 5 pieces of gum. Each gum is like an energy drink. So check us out at strikegum.com. Be sure to take advantage of our subscribe and save. Save some money if you obviously subscribe and best of all, you'll get free shipping on orders over $40. So you can't lose. It's a no-brainer. Go to strikegum.com or you can pick some up on Amazon. The link is in the description. Okay, so let's talk about the U.S. The U.S., it says, is sending a small number of additional troops to the Middle East in response to this increasing violence between Israel and Hezbollah, and has raised the risk of this war in the Gaza Strip really expanding. And, it's a real fear. The U.S. has about 40,000 troops in the region. Even I didn't realize the number was that high because, again, when the U.S. was sort of operating at the end of the Afghan war, before there was that treaty signed with the Taliban, we still maintained about 5,000 to 10,000 troops supporting the Afghan government. And that was actually relatively effective at kind of keeping the Taliban at bay. So the fact that we have 40,000 troops across the region is actually pretty considerable, right? At the peak of the Iraq war, you had about 100,000 troops in Iraq. So the fact that we're at 40% of the peak era is itself a very strange and interesting development. And, they say they're sending an additional small number of troops. I think of small as being, under 1,000 or definitely under 5,000. Likely, I suspect these small troop increases would be to facilitate a potential evacuation of U.S. citizens from Lebanon. Again, there was no specifics provided, but Benjamin Netanyahu actually put out a recorded message telling citizens of Lebanon to evacuate their homes. Lebanese civilians should leave their homes in response to this widening air campaign. He said Israeli warplanes will continue to hit Hezbollah targets in southern and eastern Lebanon. The U.S., of course, has not announced officially what they're going to be doing, but they do appear to be positioning 2 carrier strike groups to enter the Middle East. Again, a sign that the U.S. wants to have at least optionality preserved. It wants to have the ability to make these kind of decisions. It wants to have all the tools it can bring to bear to solve these kinds of problems. Again, we're talking about, like we saw with the Iranian response, where it was a wave of drone attacks that took out, the U.S. air defenses mostly took down, right? Now, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut is warning any U.S. citizens to get out of Lebanon while commercial options still remain available. Again, and Major General Pat Ryder wouldn't say if the additional forces are supporting the evacuations of citizens, but if they were, he wouldn't come out and say it. Again, he wants to preserve his optionality. He doesn't want to commit forces to any particular role. So, what does this mean? Well, it is a troubling sign of a potential expansion of this conflict across the Middle East, drawing in, again, sort of work its way closer to those Iranians, right? The Iranian, generally the chain of custody, so to speak, is that Iran provides a lot of funding and logistic support for Hezbollah. They're very closely affiliated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, but Hezbollah, in turn, is a contributor, a heavy contributor to Hamas. So this chain of custody, so to speak, filters down to Hamas. And so it makes sense that they would attempt to back up their proxy as they were more and more beleaguered by the Israeli military. But it seems like Lebanon may have, in the FOFA, so to speak, fuck around, find out, FAFO, they're in the find out phase. Because, again, the Israeli military seems to have just gone gloves off, right? Tired of dealing with these constant attacks. And the fact is that it's almost troubling because the Israeli military effectively has realized that if everything that the West was going to do to try to stop them, they've done. There is no more that I think is going to happen to them as they prosecute their war in Gaza. And so they say, well, if you didn't come after us for anything in here, if you didn't stop the flow of weapons, well, we can just prosecute this war in Lebanon however we want. And this is sort of troubling because, again, we're so anti Putin because he aggressively invaded a sovereign nation under some pretty light pretexts. And we said, no, you can't do that. We're going to back Ukraine, right? Ukraine has a right to their sovereign country. And again, Israel, there's more tit for tat that's gone back and forth. But it sounds like Israel's preparing for some kind of larger invasion or ground operation. And that would be a real dangerous escalation in this conflict. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you appreciate this analysis. And, of course, thanks to our Colonel tier members like James Sterling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Netson, Bastian Hemmerling, Brian Kelly, James McCombs, Dale McCombs, James Ola, and Henry Rossier, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. I couldn't do this without you guys. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.